Hello, my loves, and welcome to the Feminine Legacy Podcast. This is your host, Jacqueline Hyacinth, and I'm so thrilled today to bring in Anabel Vizcarra, who is a sister, a dear friend of mine, and an incredibly luscious colleague that I love to share and dive into conversation with because I respect and honor her and her medicine so truly. So, Annabelle, I'm so excited to talk about the depth of growth and wisdom that you've come to share today and that we come together to illuminate. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so grateful, honored, and joyful to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you
You're
for inviting me
welcome.
into this and for finally recording one of our amazing conversations and inviting others into it.
Oh
So
my God.
thank you.
Annabelle and I have endless conversations. We do hello phone calls that end up being 3 hours because we are like solving the problems of the world in every phone call.
Or we think we are anyway.
Exactly. We do. We think we are. Better said, indeed. So, all right, today we want to dive in to a beautiful topic. Annabelle has undergone an incredible process of evolution that she has come to share with us. And I want to just really open the space and let you just drop it in for us, and then we'll weave.
Beautiful. Yes. So our theme today, our conversation today is around this my journey with my implants and then my explant surgery, to kind of and coming full circle with this whole process that was 22 years long. I received well, I got my implant surgery when I was 21, and then I just had my explant last November. So I'm about 5 months post-op, and I feel like where do you want to begin? Because
Yeah.
yeah, like where do you want to begin?
So, first, I want to pop back to 21 years old to
Mm.
Annabelle then.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And just lean into that heart of you and what was moving through you at that time. Where were you in your consciousness that would open up the space for you to even bring this in? Like give me a little
Yes.
bit of a snapshot.
Beautiful. Okay, so I I'm the oldest of four, and my father passed when I was 9, and my mother she decided to stay here in the States because we were living in Mexico at the time, and she decided to stay here. She didn't speak English, she didn't know how to drive, and she had four little crazy children running around, and which was very very courageous of her to do that because she wanted us to have opportunities that we were not going to have in the little town ranch that we lived in Mexico. So why I bring that up is because that's where my seeking begins, and my world completely changed at that time. And I used to see my dad as like my God. It was kind of like nothing could ever touch me. Nothing. I felt so powerful. I felt so powerful because he was my father and he was very well respected in the town where we were from. And so everybody knew, it's like, oh, that's his daughter. So, nobody can mess with you, sort of thing. And so when he was gone, I found myself in this place of just complete helplessness, of really not confusion mostly, because I wouldn't even say I knew what helplessness was at that time, but just very confused about what was life, what was happening. It just became a complete different reality. And then I went through school, experience bullying, not knowing English. So there was a lot of bullying in my last year of elementary and then middle school. And then when I got to high school, after a really deep process of grief that's a whole other episode. But what I then decided going into high school was that I was going to be a very different person, that I was not going to be that helpless child, that my dad was not going to come back, that no one, I couldn't count on anyone. So I had to stand up for myself. I had to make my way in the world by myself. And at that time, that's kind of what I took on. And so I also started looking for God, because I was saying, if my dad wasn't God, If I bargained with God when my dad was in the hospital. I said, I will never say a cuss word, all these like child things that you're like, I will give you this if you give me this.
Yes.
And I was like, just let him live, let him come back home, and I will, do ABC. I went through the whole thing. And so when that didn't happen, for me was about like finding the answer, like what, so who is God? What is God? Where is he? And then I went through that process. When I went through different religions, I dove into them. I was looking for a place to get baptized. Like that was my dream. And every time I would get close to it, all these other questions would emerge, around, well, why isn't there any women in leadership inside of these institutions? Why can't I talk about this? Why can't I get answers about, just, little things that as a teenager you come up with, and that are not little, by the way, because that's really when we start to, step into our dragon power, right? As
Yeah.
as you so beautifully teach. And and so there was no place for my dragon. So let's just put it that way. In these institutions, it was all like, because that's how it is. And don't ask those questions because the elders don't like that. Don't ask this because, now you're not having faith. Like all these ways in which we're turned away from that to doubt ourselves. And so, long story short, at 16 years old, my mom sits me down. I come in, and I'm super excited because I just got a letter from the University of Texas, that I was being considered for a scholarship into journalism, which was like what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into war zones. I wanted to, like expose and all of that. And I've come in and I'm so excited, and I show it to her. And she just looks at me and she's like, no, no, you can forget about going to college. You're not going to university. You need to go get a job because you're 16 years old. You can get a work permit now, and I need help. And so I'm the oldest, so that was her thing. You're the oldest, so this is your job. And so I said, I didn't like it. But something happened then that I kind of took that on as that was my thing. And then this connects back to the last things my father said before he passed. But I took on this role, and and one of the things that I realized was that I need to feel in power, because I need to be strong for these children too. I have for my three siblings, and for my mom, because at that time I judged her as very weak because she was, sort of a doormat, didn't have boundaries, didn't, and that's just kind of the lineage story of women in my life, in my line. And so I said, I'm not going to be weak like her. I am going to be strong. I'm going to show her what a mother should be. And so there was this, almost like this, from her telling me that, this like rebelliousness emerged in me, that I was like, you're weak. Like, you have four children and you can't even take care of us. Now let me show you how that's done. And I took that on, and she became my child too, in many ways. And so I did that. I went into real estate right out of high school, and I, got my license, like all these things. I went to a sheriff's academy, and I was going to be a sheriff because that felt powerful to me, and so it was almost like exploring, well, what is power? What like makes us do things? And I was very curious about all that stuff. And then when I was in real estate, I just, it just became a thing. It's like, I loved dressing up. I loved looking beautiful. I wanted to be feminine. I wanted to be a woman that felt empowered, and one of the things that I had always kind of looked at myself as less than as a woman was that I had a B cup, for my breast, and so I was always like wearing push-up bras and like making them look bigger. And so that was the first thing. One of my friends said, I'm going to go get implants. You want to come? This is exactly how it happened. Okay. We would go salsa dancing, and she was amazing. I love her. Big shout out to her. She lives in Florida now, and we talk every now and then, but she's like, let's go. And I said, okay, well, if you're doing it, I'm doing it. And so it was a weekend, went, got it done, came back home. I had my, my D cup and
Wow.
and it really, I felt like at that time it really changed a lot of things for me, because I felt like I'm powerful now. I get attention. People are looking at me, and so there was this, and not to say that I was so conscious of this, but this was like feeding me something, so I was unconsciously. And so I went ahead and I did it, and and that's it. I never looked back. I just thought they were amazing. I loved them. I still love them. I miss them, and so but we went on this journey, and I really feel that it comes down to that. It was a sense of power, a sense of empowering myself, a sense of like of just feeling strong in myself, that was coming from cultural conditioning, because I'm
Yep.
Hispanic. So that's a big thing already. It's like your big hips and big breasts, and all this thing is kind of like a natural motherly nurturing quality. And I have been so connected to being a mother even before this. And what's so fascinating about this too is that now, jumping to now, is that when I decided to go ahead with the explant, made the appointment, did all that, one of the things that I did not expect that was gonna come up was that I was talking to my mom about it, and she shared with me that, when we were in Mexico and we were young, there was this lady that lived across from us, and I loved her so much because her house always smelled good. She was always cooking something. She was always pregnant. She was always breastfeeding. She had like 11 or 12 kids. So it's like her, and I would go over there and eat, and all of these yummy things that I just looked at her like what I would now say is like the body of the goddess, and that nourishment. Like, I would always feel so good there. And I remember she had these big old breasts, because they were always full of milk. and, and when she would hug me, it's like I would just like go into her body, and
Yeah.
it was so nurturing, because at that time my mom would come and go between Mexico and here for work and things like that. So she was my nourishing, um, uh, like, point of reference. And then when I was here and I went into the helplessness, bullying, I had an aunt, and my aunt, she had these big old breasts. She had like double D's, and I would see her get ready, and she was kind of that aunt that was like going against the norm. She was like going to Madonna concerts. She was like dating different guys. She was like, I'm independent and free and liberated, which was very, very different for me. So I saw her as this, like, she was so glamorous and so beautiful, and she did what she wanted. So there was all these little things that, then when my mom was telling me that story, she said, when you were really little, you used to walk around with a doll, like pretending that you were breastfeeding her. And she's like, that you used to just do that, like, you used to lift your shirt and just like pretend that you were breastfeeding. And I know it comes from that woman, that I would see her do these things. So it was like, that was love for me. That was like, that was nourishment. And so what I realized leading up to my surgery was this false sense of nourishment that I was trying to reenact by morphing my body into that. By now having that here in my breast, it felt like I am that nurturance. I am, in the deeper unconscious layers, it's that, because I felt like that's a nourishment grid that in our journeys where, that's the healing process of wholeness, of coming into that self-love, self-sourcing. I am the resource. I am connected to the divine. So I feel like that's our innocence, our original grid of innocence. But then we have all these layers, like all these overlaid programs and layers that are false, but we're still living by them, right? We're connected to them because we're here in this reality. And so I felt like me having those implants connected me to a false sense of nourishment, that grid of I am powerful and I love myself. And, because I was connected to that cultural grid of false nourishment.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can go even into the dating, it's like also realizing that, of like what you also call into your life by being connected to that false sense of love, and what that brings magnetizes into your life, as like lovers and all these things. But yes,
Oh, I just
that's
want to take a deep breath there and say it is such a tricky little bitch, isn't it? It's like there is truth in the essence, right? Like, so there is that memory of truth that, as you said, that's underneath. And then there's all this polarization and conditioning, ancestor lineage, our own soul records, everything that's laying it. And so there is this truth of that nourishment, and then it's twisted, right? Which we know is like that connection to what we would refer to as like the dark matrix, or those subliminal levels that are not at their purest form, that are accessing us,
yes.
and how we don't know until we know. And so we have to go on the journey, right? And like, and weed through and do take the whole ride all the way through in
And
order
that
to get the
that
medicine.
false sense of power, right? That's
Oh,
so seductive. That's so like
yes,
it's so charged. If you, it really does make you feel like I am powerful. Like there's that, like it's a false sense of life force,
it
because
is.
but once you're with it long enough, you realize it's just sucking your true essence away, and Jackie, I'm big into the like the gene keys, and in my radiant sphere, which is one of a very important sphere. It's like I have that shadow of corruption, and the gift of equilibrium, and the divine gift of harmony, and that's how I see that. It's like that at its essence, at its essence, it's that harmony. And then that data gets corrupted, so it's like, as our innocence is moving from spirit world into the physical world, there's all these corruptions and this data disruption in our bodies through, conditioning, ancestral filters, and all that, that then, morphs into this corrupted way of seeing things, which for me was that corruption of power. It's like
Yeah.
I was attuned to life force, to true power, to innocence. But then as I moved that energy through my body, it became distorted as, oh, I need to have this and do this, and manipulate this, and
Yeah.
so that I can feel that sense of I am powerful in this world.
It's so subtle, and then it's not, right? Like the control mechanisms that just come online, and they're so activating,
Yes.
and they make us feel so enlivened, and it's so tricky until you go through and you start to learn and be able to discern what is true power and what is not true power. And we just don't know what we know until we know. And
Mm.
so going through the journey of like the depths of, coming to earth and embodying the Sophic wisdom, right? Dropping down into the underworld and exploring and growing through, we can't escape it. Like you wouldn't be able to have the wisdom that you're carrying now if you didn't go under, if you didn't walk with it. If your light wasn't corrupted, you wouldn't be able to bring the antidote of that super powerful discernment
Mm.
that now you're going to naturally embody and share just by emanating the Christ-like essence that you walk with. It's a freaking superpower. It's so beautiful. I There's something that's coming through that I really want to lean into so that our audience understands what was that pivotal point for you where you made the decision, where you were like, "Oh no, these have to go. These aren't true to me." Where was that? How did that drop in for you?
So I feel like it was a gradual process of over 8 years. I think that early on there was that desire for me that I was like, I want to do it because this isn't natural in my body. And I went into Ayurveda, Ayurveda school and all these things. So understanding like that actually what my body, the response that it was having of something foreign in my body wasn't necessarily healthy. So it kind of came with that health awareness. And then, I love all things like, how do I optimize this vehicle, and, all that. And so I knew that there was this unhealthy part. And also I feel like at that time I was in a relationship where it also, like, we were really enjoying that. This, in a way, it was also like, I'm not gonna say that's what brought us together. However, when you meet someone and there's like that kind of like distorted aspect, it does bring you, it's like a, not trauma bonding necessarily, but there is this aspect of like, you have what I need, and I have what you need, like, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so talking through it, it wasn't very well received in a way, so I think that was a little bit of discouragement. Not that, not that he was like, don't do it, but there was my own internal interpretation of that was like, I don't want to shake that, I don't want to move that. And so I flowed with that. And to say that, even I really loved my breasts, I loved them. They made me feel good. I would go to sleep and I was just like, hug them, and, they were just nourishing for me. So it was a process of separating, or like creating space between that. And then once I started working deeper with like medicine work, and, all of these different things, I think that I just knew it was going to happen. I just didn't know when. And another thing I have to say, it's such an expensive surgery. It's much less. I mean, you can go get a credit card and go get them done, and it's like no big deal. But with an explant, a lot of them won't even take credit cards. Some of them are only cash
Ooh.
only. It's like, it's very, and it's an, I have so much to say about that, but it's very pricey. I think for me, it was around 22,000, what it's come out to be. And that's not even including the aftercare that, and that we've got to go through to bring our bodies back into harmony. So I got distracted by that,
That's
but
okay.
this is
Yeah.
like ridiculous how
It's
much,
ridiculous. Can you
you
give us
know,
like just market, because I'm not in the know as far as like in today's day and age, to
yeah,
get your breast done to begin with? What are you? I mean, I realize that there's a wide range of surgeons, right?
different. Yeah, I mean, you can, from anywhere from 5 to 10,000
Okay. Yep.
is normal. My doctor, which by the way, he is amazing and I love him. He was with me for so many decades. But that was, I think it was about, I paid originally about 8,000,
Okay.
and then when I got them redone, it was about 9,000. So that's where we're looking at. And then you have to get them redone about every 10 years, because you want to, make sure that there's no infections and things like that. And so there's so many things that go into it that, when I was 21, I didn't care. And I do hear a lot of oh, the doctor should inform us, and I do believe that yes. And also, I will tell you that at 21 years old, I wouldn't have cared. I would have said, I probably just signed those waivers and things and didn't even read them, because it wasn't important to me, and so there is a sense of like, we really have to do our own research. And that's the sovereign part of like,
It
if I'm
is.
making a decision for my body, it's not the expert's job to necessarily tell me. Yes, they should, of course, it's ethical, but really it comes down to me. I need to do that research for myself. And yes, I had no sense of that at that time. For me, it was about the result. And so yeah, so then I've been knowing, and 5 years ago, I actually went in with the purpose of that, of having them removed, but I had not done any research, and I didn't go to someone who was an explant doctor. I went to someone who's an implant doctor, and he said, well, we'll see if everything looks good, and if not, then we will take them out. And I just, trusted the word for it. So I came out, and the first thing I remember is like waking up. My sister was there with me, and the first thing I remember is like touching my chest. I'm like, oh, they're still there, and I knew that they were still there. And for a month, I beat myself up for it. I was like, why? This was my opportunity to get them out, and all that. And then I said, I'm gonna trust that mistakes. I'm gonna trust the decision. I'm gonna trust it. And what I'm gonna do is I know that they're gonna leave my body at some point. So I'm just really gonna embrace them and enjoy them and just be with them. And that was about, yeah, 5 years ago. And so last year I went into a really deep apprenticeship with a mythical being that is now in the spirit world. And that was one of the things that kind of kept coming up in our journey together, not through him, but just through my own awareness of like, I've got to surrender this. And you know what, it felt like that Inanna story. I feel like my life has been that of coming to these gates and being willing to drop a part of me, like being able to take off my crown, drop it, take off my jewels, take off my clothes, and for me, this gate into that underworld was like, just take off everything that is not that original blueprint body that I was born with. And my implants were it. So I remember having in June of last year, I had this ceremony. I was doing deep work with tobacco, and going into this tobacco purge and this ceremony for I think it was like a week long, and coming to that real that this very felt sense that it was almost like tobacco was saying, until you surrender that, I don't want to talk to you. And that was like, oh, wait, what? It was very like, and of course this is my journey. I'm so don't take this so serious, lightly. This is my own experience. But for me, that was it. Like, this is it. And I said, okay, if this is the next step for me, then grant me the resources to be able to do this. And I set the appointment, because that's one of the things that I love doing, is that every time I know I need to do something, I take one action, inspired action, that says to the universe, that says to the grid, like, I'm ready, show me the way, here's my commitment. And so my commitment was doing the research, diving into that, setting an appointment, even when I didn't have the resources, I didn't have the money for it. And I still made the appointment, with the doctor. And then I went into the appointment, had it. And when I came out, I set the date, which was a month from that appointment. I set the date, and I didn't have the money for the deposit. I said, I know that it's all moving, because everything was flowing just, so perfectly. And sure enough, I was open to the resources and kind of doing my homework around it, and it came. And so that was the kind of the thing that was, I still didn't feel so ready as in to say, like, but it's one of those things, Jackie, where like, are we ever truly ready to do anything? We can sit around and think about it and hope for it, and I think that there's a part of us that's always going to be that little comfort that's too comfortable in the known, and that's like, but what if that happens, and what if this, and there's a part of us that has to be willing to just lean in and take that lead, of like, okay, let's just do it, because if I wait around, when am I going to be ready? And I think eldership is so important to me as well, and integrity, and walking what I talk. And once I knew it, as a visceral knowing, as my guide telling me, like, once it was there's no going back. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what I want. It's what is thy will, And so that's where for me, I think that changed it. Emotionally, I felt ready. Physically, I felt ready. And I was not, there's a lot of talk about the BII, the breast illness, and I wasn't experiencing any of that. So I do want to say that I didn't feel like I had any symptoms. I felt very healthy. The thing with the health perspective of that is that I was already having symptoms of like perimenopause. And when I went to the doctor and checked my hormones, and they, they say, well, you're 43 years old, you're starting this perimenopause journey. It's normal that you're having the hot flashes, that you're having joint pain, that you're having headaches. All those things are so I kind of was like, okay, this is just a process my body's going through. But what I realized after getting my implants out, all of that has gone away.
Mm.
All of those early perimenopausal symptoms have gone away. And not to say that they're not going to come back, because it's a process of, my body. And I'm okay with that. I accept whatever my body needs to go through, and I'm going to support it. But just for me, what it showed me is the level of inflammation in my body that was there, that was also bringing on these things early,
Yeah.
and it's kind of that thing when our body's not in harmony, whatever is a natural process becomes amplified and comes earlier. So that's one of the big changes that I have seen physically. But I was not having any symptoms like that, and even my doctor said, I really don't want to do this surgery because, typically women who come in and don't have symptoms, because this is a reconstructive surgery, they'll come back months later and want to have the implants done again,
Mm.
because aesthetically it isn't going to be as pleasing. So, and I was like, just I want to do it. I'm going to go through it. Let's do it. And sure enough, and now the after, I can really see why he was saying that, because it's an incredibly emotional, spiritual process, physical process, that if you are not really centered in something, then it can create a lot of confusion, and a lot of, just a sense of like, what did I do? What I should I have done that? So, and that's why when people are sick, they're okay with that, because if you're sick and it takes it away, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, who
Right.
cares? Like, my health's more important. But if you're not having that, then it becomes like, it really is an emotional and spiritual process of I anchoring into something deeper.
Mm.
Mhm.
It feels like such a powerful process. And the fact that you are at the roots, like defragging all the parts of you essentially that created all those false power systems. It's like that are connected to the breast, right? But it's bigger than that. So, of course, it's going to take time and grief. It's an entire lifetime that was mounted, and
Yeah.
not to mention all the others. All the other lifetimes are all the lineage. Oh, there's so much here.
Things around it. And what? I want to say something, and not to put him on the spot because I love him, but because I love him, I'm going to share this.
Yeah.
My brother. So I love my brother, and actually he was a big support, and in this journey, he's been such a pillar, and he's been, so supportive and loving, and in all of the ways, and but when I originally said, I get out of the doctor's office and I'm like, okay, I had my appointment with the explant, and I call my brother and he's like, how did it go? And I was like, it went great. I set up the appointment. I feel good. And of course, because he loves me and cares so much for me,
Mhm.
his words were, Annabelle, are you sure you want to do this? Because you're 43, you're a single mom,
Oh,
and now you're not going to have breasts. Ooh. And I said, ooh,
wow.
this is my brother,
Mhm.
and I took that in as it wasn't like a negative impact, but it was almost like like a reality check. Wow, this is how the world is going to see me now. This is when they look at me, they're not going to look at what's the backstory, what's the, oh, now you love yourself, let's celebrate that. No, they're going to look at me, and that's the filter they're going to see me through. And that was very powerful, because I just took a breath, and it was almost like in that moment was the real commitment, was the real vow. And and I said to him, and that's exactly why they need to come out, because why would I want someone in my life that is with me because of my breast? Why would I want to connect with my false self first? I am so much more than a pair of boobs. It's like I have, and so there, so, and then he was like, okay, yeah, okay, but it was like
He was like, let
very,
me back off.
yeah, he's like, okay, fine, I will back off. But and he was like, yeah, that's great, and I said, and I also said, and my priority is my vitality. As I get older, there's so much work to do, there's so much beauty to experience, and my vitality is important. And I don't want to wait. And I live by this, Jackie, like, I don't want to wait for the crisis to make the change. And
No.
the thing is, we're always being told, like, if we're listening, if we're tuning in, life is always giving us the hints, the guidance to what is that next change. But we don't want to listen because we don't want to let go of that, right? So then it's like, then it has to come in as a crisis. And now we don't have a choice, So now it's like, okay, fine, I'll make the change. And I didn't want to wait for that with my health, because my health is so important to me. That's my vitality, my ability to incarnate light, my ability to be a vessel for, higher wisdom, or whatever that is, like, to be a
Yeah.
blessing in the world. That requires my vitality. And so yeah, so that was like, I felt like that phone call itself was just another, like, a very highlighted of, like, wow, this is what the world's gonna see. And am I still up for that? Am
Yeah.
I big enough to meet that and transform it? Or am I gonna just be like, oh yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Maybe I should just wait for, my husband to so I can trick him. I can trick him with my breasts, and then I'm
Lure
like,
him in with the girls.
psych. Lure him in, with that siren false song.
Yeah.
And then, that's not even really me, so it was just a really interesting journey with that.
I really just feel like sharing my heart is celebrating you. And also, there's like this ache around what is happening within the psyches of humanity, and like what's happening in the hearts and spirits of not just women, it's happening to men too, right? Like this whole living from the outside in and finding these false narratives of power for us, instead of being able to know that the true power is just that rawness, that emptiness, this natural birth, this natural body. But that is the journey here. But it is really quite a journey for each one. And I want to lean in with you around, well, heartbreak is coming up, that too. And also like how we are unconscious mostly. And it's heartbreak that is drawing us into places looking for power, right? Heartbreak. And I would then say the damage of the womb from this perspective, like that connects us into these false grids that then draws us towards something. It's like we're looking for wholeness, and so there is something that is not, that inside of us does not feel like it's in alignment, doesn't feel it's seeking something. And so then it goes into all of these outlets, whatever it can grab, but because it's not in um the heart of itself, it doesn't have access seemingly to, like, oh, let me just pick the fresh, ripe fruit from the tree. It has to go through a distortion in order to make that right. And I believe that that's actually very purposeful for us to be able to bring more of our light into the body, right? For us to incarnate, and that's what you chose in order for you to be able to do that. That was just one way for you to bring that miraculous gift inside of you. But then there's the whole energetic piece that I think it's important to get into, since you did mention, like, so yeah, we have a lot of the physical health concerns covered. And also I want to
Mhm.
just bring in, we do not know the ramifications of generations later, because this is still a new technology, what this actually means for the bodies of women, or women who have the breast surgery and then are pregnant in a body that is carrying something that is foreign, breastfeeding. There are so many anomalies and things that have not yet progressed. And of course, are they really studying? Are they putting money into funding and resources for us to be able to look at the truth about what is happening to women? And since there's so many ways in which we cannot truly pinpoint, as you said, like with the perimenopause, is it this or is it that? And so it's so easy because women have been overrided for so long around our symptoms as to
Yeah.
what is the true root of the symptom that is arising in women. And so we can't wait for the medical industrialized complex to be like, yes, ladies, this is actually
Absolutely.
ineffective and harmful for you. So please stop getting them.
Mhm.
That's not going to be a reality. And
I
so,
mean, there's actually like there's doctors that don't believe in this breast illness, the breast implant illness, because they don't even acknowledge it. Like, well, there's not really, but it's like you have all these women and groups of women that's like the moment they go through the surgery, they feel like just healthier. And I will say that like in the, before we kind of dive in deeper to the energetic piece, but just even physically, I didn't have any symptoms that I thought that
awesome.
because I had normalized them. My body was growing and changing and shifting with these implants in my body. So there was a lot of things that were for me were normal, and now looking back before I even started having like the quote unquote perimenopausal symptoms,
Yeah.
it was headaches, intense headaches right before my menstruation. It was also retaining water.
Hmm.
So there are all these things that now I see is like, oh, that's gone. So all the inflammation that's in your body because your body's 24/7 kind of protecting you, forming scar tissue around the implant because it wants to keep it contained so that it doesn't, and that's if your implant doesn't burst, you know, uh, so many of us are doing saunas now. Like some of these things are leaching into our body. These have not been tested in
Yep.
those kind of heat conditions. So there's all these different things, thyroid issues that women are having early on and don't understand why. So there isn't a list of just this. There's so many things that your body could be expressing it through. And like I said, my brain fog is gone in the morning. I have so much more energy. I have clarity of thought. I feel so much more at ease in my emotional body. There's like a deeper peace inside of that, even when things are chaotic. So it's just like all these are just physical expressions,
And do
not to
you
mention what we're
see,
going to dive into.
yeah,
Sorry?
and do you see how powerful it is too in the way that we tolerate our threshold for tolerating bullshit when we want something, when there's a benefit, right? And so this is like looking at the spiritual aspect of things. It's like, oh, if I'm getting fed in this particular way, I'm just going to lean into that feeding and I'm
Mhm.
going to ignore how much pain I'm tolerating or the symptoms I'm tolerating. And so we ignore them and they start to mount, right? And then meanwhile, we're still like engaged in this way. And then there comes a point, and as you said so beautifully, and may it be for all of us that it becomes easier that we choose the path of listening prior to there being an extraordinary event of trauma and pain and heartbreak to offset that. But wow, like we tolerate these ego structures that grow so strong inside of us.
Yeah.
And then it's like coming back. No one really modeled, or yeah, that makes me sad. No one really modeled for us what it looks like to live in the heart of truth. And because no one here is walking around unscathed or unindoctrinated, right? But
Yeah.
to have women model this like true fragrance and hold it and stand in it. And so that's my prayer for you and for me, right? That we're cultivating that type of resiliency of where we choose that inner truth, that inner self, and protect and preserve her in the same way the body's trying to protect and preserve and balance us, that we really summon and nurture that one that's deep, deep underneath, and like are committed to like pulling her out and letting
Mhm.
her be the one that comes to emanate. Yeah.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Yes.
Yeah. Mm. So, energy bodies, tell me where we want to go as far as like having something foreign. Can you show us your, not your, don't flash it.
Sure. Yes, I have my implants here.
Look at those girls. And you said they're about 3 pounds?
3 pounds together.
Wow.
Yes. 3 pounds together, and it's so, I mean, yeah, where do we want to go? I actually, I engage this beautiful body of work that's called functional patterns. And one of the things training this is like there's a lot of fascia awareness, there's a lot of, just our movement, our posture, all these things, like how we somatically hold so many things, right? And what I was really noticing is like when, as I'm engaging this body of work and doing it, working out in that way, right? It's like I could feel just so much constriction in my chest area, that because it teaches you how to breathe and do all these things. It's like being able to take that deep breath was almost impossible for me, because it like began to feel all this pressure. And so I was really curious to see, and even my trainer, we're like, okay, let's kind of create a study thing around this, because it's not talked about how even just the weight of it. Let's, aside from all the symptoms, aside from all that, just that weight that your body is not designed for, carrying that weight, and how that affects our posture, how that affects how we show up, like all these things, so our movement. And so that I've have, like, now that they're not here, it's like sometimes I still feel, I was telling you this before the call, I still feel like they're there at times, and then I kind of go and like my hand moves past
Yeah.
where it was conditioned to stop,
Fans
you
of
know,
boobies. Yeah.
but also that openness, that like availability, being able to hug people, because I love hugs, being
Yeah.
able to hug and to just really meet heart to heart without the saline bags between us, and then the other piece of it is just like also feeling my own heartbeat in a different way. Like now it's just like naturally I always just want my hands here, because it's like this, wow, there's this space, there's this openness. So I feel like when we're designed to carry the weight that we are created to carry in the world. And I feel that sometimes, through like for me, through that distortion, adding 3 pounds of weight to my body, and energetically, how that was moving me out of my energetic blueprint,
Yes.
because it's not created to, like my actual blueprint doesn't carry those 3 pounds. So there is a sense of that, like now that's just feels lighter. I do feel more energetically different. I can't really articulate what the difference is, but there is that aspect of it there.
It feels really powerful too. I mean, obviously, they're perched, our breasts are over our heart. So, of course, it makes so much sense that now this obstruction is removed and all of our meridians, there's so much that is activated and consistently in communication talking. And if you have this plastic, right, with like impeding on your gorgeousness, then it naturally obstructs flow. So this is really important. It's really important for us to understand like what we're doing when we take something into our body that's not ours.
Yes,
And
yeah.
and not from a place of like judgy wrong, but we know we're careful about who we let inside of our body, right? And then we have to be really wise around what we place. and choose to take in, whether it's implants, I mean, the everything that is
Food, water.
marketable right now. Yeah, totally. Food, water, everything that we take in. We're learning how to steward the body in a way that is revolutionary for our culture.
Yes. And and not to mention like all the toxins that are here now, that were not decades ago. So
Yes.
that also like they're finding microplastics in placentas now,
Yeah.
so it's just we're through lotions, shampoo, environment, the air, the water, like it's everywhere. So there's like this accumulation of toxins. And then on top of that, we already have like a battle that our body is fighting to protect us from this foreign object, right? So then now you add to that. And this is why I feel like that breast illness implant is becoming so loud now, because it's not just the implant,
It's
it's
not.
that and everything else that we are taking in, that's toxins, that isn't
Exactly.
healthy for us, chemicals, cleaning products, all of these different things. So yes, there is this this aspect of the more that you purify the body, the more that you kind of become, and again, it's a long journey, right? Because there's so many different avenues.
Yeah.
And the more that you come to what you need, I think the key is not to be in denial about it.
Yeah.
Because for some women, they have no symptoms, they love them, amazing, that's your journey, that's beautiful, and I do want to say that, because I feel like, I mean, I enjoyed my large breasts. I was my 20s, my 30s, I enjoyed them. And I came to a place where that was no longer what I needed in my life, what I needed in my journey. So I can now lay it down, right? And I feel that for many women, it's not about us saying like you have to do this, or you should do it this way. It's about just listen,
Yeah.
because when we listen, what is aligned for us is there, and we're also uniquely, we are, our journeys are so unique. There is really no wrong or right. There is only what is in alignment for you in that moment, that is taking you to that next lesson, that is taking you to that next layer, right?
It's really beautiful, and it's making me lean into how culture has changed so much since you were 21, right? And so looking at your story, which is, I didn't know that story, that angle of nourishment, which is so beautiful. And there's so many stories that are influenced by porn culture and not enoughness, and these different fragments, right? And now with the internet and this consistent visual in your face and
Body.
around what our youth is seeing, with butt implants, breast implants, fake eyebrows. I mean, folks look like Muppets. Like, they don't even look at the fake eyelashes. Everything is becoming so embellished.
Mhm.
Everything is like, mask who you are. And that is the message of culture now, which is like, it's so compromised. So now, like 20, however many years later, our children are on the internet and having different messaging. And it's stronger than it was when you and I were 21, that's for sure.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
so
absolutely. We didn't have social
we
media.
didn't have
We
it.
didn't have, I don't think we had internet,
We
did
did.
we?
We did not have it. So it's like a
And
whole other game.
yes, exactly. And that's the thing that I feel like why it's so important, and why I say like for me it's so important that I walk my talk, because
Mm.
I feel like for me, is I want to model that. I have
Yeah.
a little 2-year-old niece, and I I want to model that for her. I
Yes.
don't want her growing up thinking like, oh, I had this really cool auntie that had implants and that did, traveled the world and did. So now somehow her psyche creating that box, and now her trying to fit in that, because that's really what it is like, pick your box.
Yeah,
What
for
box
sure.
do you want to, and then once you step into it, that's what you become. But you're also, isolating things, parts of you that that are going to feel alone, that are going to feel that loneliness, that emptiness, because it's not wholeness. And I think that that's the point of the journey is like, come back into wholeness.
Yes.
Healing is wholeness. How can I be fully in my body, fully present? I'm going to be, have flaws. And that makes me unique in some way. Like or there are things that we can do, for example, if you're in a healthy, that's why I say vitality is so important, because it is about like taking care of your body. I am not saying, look, I don't wear makeup, I don't do this, I love beauty, I love beautiful things, I love aesthetics, I love that. And also I can be mindful of of choosing products that are not going to be hormone disruptors,
Yes.
that are also, different choices that we can make. And also knowing that I am beautiful. Like I don't have to wear
Oh,
makeup every day to go out. And I remember at one point I wouldn't go outside the door without makeup, without like looking, like $1 million. And where now it's like, I love that. Yes, I love that. And also I don't need that because I am me. I am sitting here in my throne, in my inner sovereignty, and making educated choices for the most part for my vitality, for my health. And that's what I want to model,
yes.
that you don't have to go out there and look like a porn star, which was totally how I felt. I mean, this dress, I would wear it and it's like my boobs would be just kind of,
Yeah.
and it's just so sexualized and I couldn't go anywhere. And I actually would find myself like covering up, and kind of having this more, instead of like feeling proud of them, and where now it just feels open. Like, I can wear these low cut dresses that I adore and not have to worry about that sexualization in that way. So it just feels more liberating. And that's what I want to model. I want to model that, like, you're not your breasts, even though they're important and they're beautiful and they're amazing, but the size of them isn't you. It doesn't make you bigger because you have bigger breasts. It's like, and so, and there is a beautiful thing about this too. I think that, we can look at all these things of how we're just extra, right? Like the eyelashes, the hair, the everything, and I feel like what it really at the core of it, when you start to really drop in and follow that thread inside, it's that longing for that goddess. It's
Mm.
the longing for that bigness. It's that longing for that big lap where you could just lay down and feel warm and nourished. It's longing for our extra to be embraced in the world, like as a woman. Like we are big, we're extra, we're dramatic. Like that is us. And there's a distortion of what that is, right? And for me, like that false sense of nourishment, that's what I feel. It's like we're tapping in to these matrices of extra that promise a reward, but that
Yes.
it's empty. It's like fast food.
It
You can
is.
eat it, it'll taste good, and you're like, this is so good. But what are the nutrients? There's no nutrients. It's just creating toxins in your body. It's just creating like this harmony with your hormonal system and your digestive tract. We're seeing all of these autoimmune disorders emerging. And what's autoimmune? Our autoimmune system is meant to keep things out that are not healthy for it. This is why we sneeze. This is why we get allergies, right? It wants to expel that. And that's what I think it's our spiritual autoimmune system that's
Yes.
actually kicking in, that is saying like, you're plugged into the wrong sense of extra, my dear. you know
Yes.
it's
I
like,
love that,
you are
Annabelle.
big, you are extra, and you're dramatic, and you're huge, you're loud.
Yeah.
And also, it's like, how are we expressing that? Is that what's healthy for us?
Yeah. The fibroids, the PCOS, the imbalances, and
The
even things
breast.
like
Yeah.
the autoimmune diseases. It's basically, we don't know what's wrong with you. And this is a title. for something that is being offset inside, but there's no real reason for it. We can't pinpoint it, so we're going to give you this, this label. And
Mhm.
so it just leaves people feeling like they can't trust themselves. But the truth is, the journey to come in and trust ourselves is listening. It's like, oh, it's coming into the desire of that you're speaking of like, I'm really longing for something and I want to touch it, taste it. And I'm so grateful that this is a time where this is becoming enhanced on the planet, like alongside all of the polarization and all of the crises that's happening, whether it's, gastric service, gastric bypass, all of these different surgeries that are arising on the planet are causing an imbalance and a harm as well. So
Mhm.
our medical system will never tell us that, and we need to just be able to really look, if we want to become one with the earth, if we want to remember who we are, it starts right here in our own bodies, in our own breasts, our own womb, our own flesh. And the story is encoded inside,
Yeah, it
right?
really is. It really
It
is a
really
call to
is.
that wildness, right? To like rewild, resacralizing our
Yes.
bodies and our energetic bodies,
Yes.
and the bandwidth as well, because that's another piece of it. I feel like when we're in that space of depletion, when we're in that space of like chasing what's the next thing that's gonna keep me younger, that's gonna make me look better, that's gonna, all of that, we abandon so many aspects of us that because we're being dishonest in some ways with ourselves, right? So it takes radical honesty with oneself to be able to say that this is what I'm longing for. Actually, I feel inadequate. Can
Yeah.
I be with that inadequacy? Can I be honest about that instead of trying to mask it with all these different things? Can I just be with it? Like, what is the message of this inadequacy? Where does it want to take me? Where does it want to lead me to? And typically all of these things are going to lead us into that resacralization of our earth body,
Yeah.
of our connection to our Gaian mama. Gaia is we are, and I don't know if this is your experience too, Jackie, but like when you're out in the wilds, like we go out to nature and you just feel the energy, the essence, the trees are talking, all this beautiful nourishing aspect. And then you go to a very manicured garden where it's been,
Yes.
everything's neatly in its place, and it's like, sure, it's still beautiful, like it's, in its own, but the soul essence is not felt the same, you
Yes.
know, and and I feel like that's what we're doing with our bodies too. It's like,
Yes.
what is acceptable, digestible, agreeable for culture? What puts me in a better position to have that partner, to have that career, to have that? And so we're moving into that, of like that, um gardening ourselves in that way, like
Yes.
bring the weed killers, bring the spray, the whatever it is, and we're abandoning that wildness in us that knows how an ecosystem works, that knows that it needs this for this, that influences this, and instead we're just compartmentalizing everything and wondering, why do I feel empty? Why do I feel like depressed? Why do I feel we're depressed? Because our essence isn't being expressed, our aliveness, our creativity. It's being like, uh, we're constipated
Yeah.
spiritually,
Yes.
and when you're
Beautiful.
constipated, it doesn't feel good. You have headaches, you feel bloated, all these, and that's how I feel. It's like that wholeness is like return, like, let me give myself the nutrients, let me get myself to that harmony, and that's naturally going to connect me to the greater, deeper, organic web, because that's where flow is. That's our true sensuality, where it emerges from, not just this sexuality that sells, or this sexuality that even gives the body that sense of life force, that's like, oh, this feels good, that it's like getting drunk on that. Like I was drunk on power, but
Yep.
a false sense of power, and it made me feel alive. but only for a little bit. Because guess what? I was still a workaholic. I was still eating my feelings away. I was stuffing it with burgers, and I used to say, I'm a foodie. I just love food. Oh, it makes me feel so good, you know? But that was my excuse. Like, no, I felt discomfort in my body,
Yep.
and shutting food down there would keep my body distracted and busy so I didn't have to digest the real emotions. I didn't have to digest what was really happening for me. And so there is so we're so interconnected with everything. You know, what one of us does definitely reverberates out, you know, and that's why we're able to be permission givers, you know, in so many ways. It's like our life is the permission. It isn't what we talk about, it
Yep.
isn't the words, because that's limited. The language of the goddess isn't even words. You know, there's such a beautiful book called The Language of the Goddess,
Goddess.
you know, where before words, because words encapsulate things, so it leaves things out. But when we're able to really tune into that language, it's like we understand, it's like it's in the movement, it's in the body, it's in the flow, it's in the grunts, it's in the crying, it's in the all these things that are too much for this culture, you know, too much for society, or too much for our families, you know, what are they going to say, you know, what are they, you know, and it's a challenging journey. It takes courage, it really does. But I feel that for those of us who are called to that, it is important work, because we are becoming the elders. We are becoming, you know, those wise aunties, hopefully, you know, that the magical aunties that it, that can give that permission and say, you're amazing as you are, and you know, and yes, the world's going to tell you all these different messages. I went through that, I lived through that, you know, and hopefully that creates that generational shift, change, opportunity to move deeper into our real worth
Mhm.
that is always there, doesn't need anything to
Yeah.
embellish it, or to make it be. It's there because you're born, because you were born, you are worthy, period.
Yeah.
And so it's just so it's for me, it's just, I think it's even like fan the flames of this holy fire that I feel, you know, of just like, yeah, just seeing all the bullshit that we engage because we're afraid of not being enough.
Mm. It's so big. It's so big. It's so powerful. I love so much of that. The most important thing right now, I'm like, oh, bring on the inner elder. Because you and I, when we first came on path and were initiating together, it was like we were weaving and healing maiden and moving through the mother. And now we are coming into this state of eldership and what it looks like to carry the wisdom from the journey. And it's powerful to be able now to usher in who we needed then,
Yes.
right? To be for
Yes.
ourselves who we've needed all along. Oh, it makes my heart like, ah,
Yeah, and I'm looking, you know, I have clients that I'm working with, and some of them are in their early 20s, and
I
it
know
just makes
it's,
me so happy, because I'm like, wow, I can't wait to be that old wrinkled woman helping you birth
yes,
your babies, you know, and or you know, kind of being that, exactly what you just said, what I longed for,
yeah,
what took me onto an external journey of seeking for that. You know, it's like now hopefully, you know, God willing, being able to be that for others, and for the youth that are, it's so incredible what's happening in our youth right now, and just being able to see how, like, they're coming in with different questions. They're, you know, they're asking the questions I was asking in my early 30s. They're asking them
yes.
at 21, at 22, you know, and that just reminds me, this is why the work is important. This is why looking at things generationally is important, because
Yes.
the women that went before me allowed me to ask those questions in my early 30s. And now my work is going to open up for those early 20s to ask the questions. And what will they, you know, so it's like we're bringing it back to hopefully that conceiving moment, you
Mm,
know, that moment of conception where a mother is aware available, and in her own loving essence, and conceiving from that space. I mean,
It's everything.
yes.
It's everything. It's really, really powerful to look at the life journey and how full it is, and how, like right now when I'm talking to you, I'm leaning into like the grandmothers and the ancestors, and this like deep sense of knowing and purpose when you look at the trajectory of everybody's journey who came before us, like the limitation you were speaking about that you were perceiving with your mom. Which, PS, your story mirrors mine in so many ways. You know, both of us with our dads passing when we were 9, and then this projection into our mothers around what was, what they were doing and what we needed. So it's really, really powerful. So I love that. Thank you. And
Yes.
this forgiveness that is born through this trust that is then found and resourced from our own sense of self, that like gives the permission and releases all of the women and the programming and the conditioning that came before, because of all the generational guilt that has been carried through the hearts and souls of women around, like, we wish we could have done it better. Because it's
Mhm.
a huge responsibility to incarnate, to bring a soul through the body. Like,
Yeah.
it's big, big work, and there is a sacrifice. That sacrifice is heavy, not like the sacrifice that they're selling in the distortion, but to hold life in your body and to offer yourself to it every day and nurture it is powerful medicine. And
Yes.
so just like watching the generations of mothers and ancestors, I'm sure your mother prayed a million times a day for things to be different, right? For her to be able to nourish you and hers and your siblings in a particular way, but she could only offer what was available. And so by
Absolutely.
you blooming into this essence, it like gives this permission slip. She fulfilled her destiny, her duty in that way, and then created this pathway for you to be like, I'm going to come into the royal road, and I'm going to claim my space and my place for my mother, for my grandmothers, for everybody, but mostly for me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know that, and that's the beauty of it. Like have coming, I love that you brought in that word forgiveness, because it's in so many layers, right? Like the forgiveness of others, forgiveness of ourselves, even forgiveness of God, which at
Yeah.
many times I have felt like, where are you? Like, do you even care about me? Do I exist? You know, all these different questions, and just that deep forgiveness that travels down the ancestry line, you know, that even with my mom, you know, it's been such a journey with her to kind of come into that forgiveness together, because just like I held so many things against her, or judgments of how she should have been, how I would be if I was a mom, you know, like
Yeah.
all these things, that then she also had resentment towards me, around me taking over as the mother, you know, so sort of like, you know, her not being good enough as a mother, you know, and having to have your daughter kind of come in and take that place, you know, and we had such a powerful ceremony together once on that. It's like just really confessing to each other these things, like, I'm sorry that I took your place, I'm sorry that I judged you for that, you know, and her telling me, like, I'm sorry I put that on you, you know, that I, you know, all these, it was so powerful and so beautiful. And now, you know, my mom, like, she's such a big support, like when retreats, you know, it's like she's there helping me out. We were just Sunday, we're at a grief workshop, and she's there, you know, supporting and dropping into her own process. And for me, that's so healing. And that it's almost like being able to tune into that nourishment now, you know, and actually being available for her nourishment, because she
Oh, yeah.
nourishes through service, she nourishes through making me food. You know, when she comes here, she's like cleaning my bathroom and making me food, and she can't really, you know, touch me and say, I love you. You know, like hug me in that way, which for me, that's where I'm like, that's what I want. That's how I know you love me. but her language is that. And now seeing that and being really able to receive that, it's like that's nourishment, that nourishment that I learned as a little girl, that was like the mom, like holding the big breast, all that, like that touch. I'm such a touch person, and knowing that, wow, my mom was also nourishment. She was like leaving us, heartbroken, to go and work fields, to go and work, that, so that we could be okay and nourished and have food, but I didn't see that. I wasn't available for that. So it's just like, I feel like the more whole we become, the more we're available to receive the love in the ways that are there, that we're deaf to or blind to, because they should look a certain way, like all the judgments. So I am so grateful for her. And I mean, she birthed four incredible beings, that, like, my siblings are my soulmates.
They are. They're
We're
beautiful.
just, we're all in our own journey, and we're all making our own mistakes and stumbling along the way. But our commitment to unconditional love for each other, no matter where we are, no matter what different beliefs we have, like, it just moves us so beautifully as a unit, and this is, I mean, unit is everything, really. I mean, that's the back engineering work, right? Of like the unit, restoration of that unit, that healthy unit,
Mhm.
and whatever that means for each of us. But because that's where we can really overflow into the world, into service in other ways. So yeah,
Mhm.
we went down that tangent.
We
I'm
did,
not
but it
sure about
feels like the entire thing, it started with nourishment and it's completing the circle with nourishment. The things that everything that we're looking for as women, as men in humanity is we start from the beginning of looking for the nourishment of the mother. And sometimes the breast is available and sometimes it's not.
yeah. Yeah. And then I do want to touch on that too, because even as a in the lover essence of it, it's like,
Mhm.
why is there this fascination with these breasts, and if there's like studies done on this, that like men are, the more fascinated they are with the breast, it's like the more lack of nourishment they had or were not breastfed when they were babies.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that's their own way of looking for that nourishment. It's like, big breast must mean I am going to be nourished here. I can feed here. I can, rest here. And I think that that's what's so important for us, to start having those conversations between men and women, because we are so depleted and malnourished in
Yes.
so many ways, that we're projecting into each other now, and that are being used against us by all these agendas of division that are at play. So, and saying it's your fault, or no, it's your fault if you did this different, if you did this, that's really not going to get us into a place of that, coming into union, coming into being able to value each other for the gifts, the different gifts that we have to offer, and to come together and grow. And so I think that that's one of the things as well, that I was ready to let go of that. It's like, I don't want to play mom. I don't want to play mom to any of your unconscious needs. I want to be received as a woman. I want to be able to really call in a man who is ready to step into being a man, not a depleted boy, not a teenager with this porn fascination, and I have to
Yes.
play into that. No, that I don't want to connect. I'm unavailable
For
to
that.
connect to that in my own home. As a client, perhaps, and I think that that's also so beautiful. It's like that discernment of, are you my client or are you my partner? you know,
That
because
has been quite a journey for me. I hear you.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And as women, we're like, so, we care, we want to nurture, we want all these things that we're just desiring to pour into someone. But when that other person isn't available for that either, it doesn't matter how much we pour, we're going to end up depleted. It doesn't matter how much we desire that. So it really does have to come back to our fullness or wholeness. What are we available for? And really, and I'm declaring it in this podcast, for me, I am just not available for that teenage. I am not available for that, child. I can be a support. I can be on the journey with you. I can, love you through it. I can hold you through it, just, as will probably be done for me.
Yeah.
But to engage it in a way where this becomes part of how we connect, I am not available for that. I have an 18-year-old, and I have an 18-year-old already, and that I'm a
Yes.
mother too. You
Yes.
know, I don't need my partner in that space, or and also that's just not sexy, is
It's
it? Like,
not.
it's not life-giving to me. And yeah, and that's the choice. It's like I will keep cultivating my energetic body, keep cultivating my wholeness, my space, and I am available for that relationship when that relationship finds me. I'm
Mm,
just not available to be in that desperate seeking for it and to a false sense of nourishment, because attention is not value. It just because I get attention does not mean I'm valued.
it's that
I'm
same false, like what the world is falling
portion.
for when there's like, when somebody is feeding attention, what type of attention are we calling in? What are we being receptive to? I
Yeah.
want
And
to
then
honor.
turning around and feeling like, why is this way?
Yeah,
Well, it's like, well, that's where you connected. That's where
exactly.
what we allowed in. That's what we're available for. And hopefully, God willing, having that awareness of, okay, I see it. I
Yeah.
see it. And let's do the necessary work so that that choice, when that comes in again, it's a very keen awareness of, I am not, thank you, but I am not available for that.
And I just want to say that there is so much nuance here. Like you and I, we're working on it, right? It's in process. And so it's really, really, it takes time. So for those that are listening to this, like again, it wasn't modeled. So to be on the journey of choosing this, it is a work of art, consistently pruning. It is not something that arrives overnight. It is through the experience of learning and walking that you're like, oh, that's where this is showing up. That's where that's showing up. And having guides to be supported in that is, what we're here for. But I think it's important. I want to like bring us into a piece that you brought in that I didn't know that we were actually going to bring in today, which was that nourishment piece. But if we look at porn culture, right, so it's very easy to just go in and bash, right, the sexual distortions. We know they exist, the false power of BDSM, porn, stripping, like all the ways in which we unconsciously prostitute ourselves at a soul level in order for us to create power structures and dynamics within our psyche, for us to deepen an understanding of that we're looking for something actually else. It normally doesn't meet the need, right? But you brought in this beautiful piece, which brings in actually more compassion, zero tolerance for bullshit, but also some compassion around when people are extricating themselves and looking to porn culture and modifying their bodies to in performative states, bleaching our coolies, all the things, labia plastia, all the ways in which we are really at a physical level distorting our earth body, right? A lot of this is coming through the eyes of culture, but it literally, it's a hungry culture. It is a culture that is bereft without its mother. Like it is somehow lost the soul of itself. It's lost the connection. And I believe deep down there is a longing for it, but it's been so overlaid and so distorted that it cannot be trusted. And the anti-life that has ensued itself through the web of this darker matrix, at a core, a lot of the people that are engaging with it are not, they're not bad people. They're not people who are like, or want to be disconnected. They are feeling a sense of bereavement. They're feeling a sense of loss. And so they're just trying to feed in whatever way they can, in whatever way their ancestors are trying to feed through them. these compulsions and these ways in which we are trying to find our nourishment are everywhere, are everywhere. So I love that you brought up like the body modification for you was like this longing for the mother, essentially, right? And for others, it's like I feel unworthy and I want to be able to I want to be desirable,
Desired.
right?
Mhm.
All of these different facets of ideas and beliefs and constructs that people feel that they will get their need met.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to like lean into porn culture and the overall messaging around us that says you are not good enough as you are. And so if you do this thing, you will then, you can become, even in the, the women's empowerment movements, there's still so much distortion around who you can become instead of being who you are.
Mhm. Mhm.
So hold
Mhm.
on, let me just like fine tune where I'm going with that. But just, is there anything you want to speak to around um, the sexual distortion and porn culture and how it's actually at its core looking for something deeper? And this
Yeah.
is just how
Yeah.
it's using people to plug in, like people who are desiring are getting plugged into a false sense of self that's feeding them. Um, but there's an innocence, like everybody is actually looking for the breast. They want to go
Yes.
home, don't know
Yeah.
how though.
Exactly. Yes, like that sense of homecoming, that home as a place of where we are loved as we are, that there is nothing missing, that we are nourished, that we are, that we are held, that we are witnessed, all these different things that are not available to us. And I feel like that's a great, it's so amazing because I personally know women, that are on platforms like OnlyFans, that are, that were strippers at some point, like that were sex workers, all these things, and they're incredible women. They're amazing women. Their souls are just, they have that dragon energy. Just doesn't, it just wasn't modeled what that was. It didn't have context for what it was experiencing, and we are living in a survival state. We, this hunger for fame, this hunger for money, this hunger for sex, these are all survival mechanisms, because this is why, when you're hungry and you're looking for food, you don't care what it is. You're not like, oh, I'm only going to be hungry for organic, is it farm to table, no, you are going to eat what you find. And this is how it feels for me. It's like the hunger is there, the hunger for that nourishment is there, but the context for it isn't. So then we
Yes.
plug into this, oh, it must mean that this is what I want. It must mean that this is what I need, because I see people and they're, so glorified and glamorized. And so that must be it. And I think that that's the false sense of success, all these different things. But at the core of it is, we're longing for intimacy. We're longing for
Yes.
connection. We're longing to be seen, to be witnessed, all these beautiful things that I said, that you can only meet with another that is in that awareness, in that space, in that essence of soul, that's actually not in the survival space of moreness, because we have a we're an addicted society to that. More, bigger, greater, brighter, up, bigger, and we have forgotten what the soul, where the soul is nurtured and nourished, and that mother essence is by going inward, the inner journey, going deeper, deep into the earth, deep into the roots, preparing the soil, all these things that call for descent. Not only have they been forgotten, they are degraded in our society.
Yeah.
Getting older, what does that mean?
Yeah. Being a
Becoming
mother.
a crone, becoming a mother. Are you supported as a mother? There's no support. as a mother to be a thriving mother in our culture right now,
Yes.
you know? And
Yep.
so there, so all these things that we're disconnected from, we're hungry for connection. And so it must mean if you're naked, your body's naked and my body's naked and we're having sex and that must mean we're connected. We're connecting. And so in so many ways, that's the connection we get.
Yep.
You know, but again, it comes from that place of hunger, of survival of that frequency of survival, you know, that actually intimacy, you don't even have to have sex, right? Like
Yeah,
that becomes it's a
absolutely.
part of it, but you're able to, you know, soul gaze, be together, feel, slow down, take your time. You know, it isn't about where are we getting to? Did you orgasm? Are
Yes.
you there yet? You know, like it's about surrendering into that holy space that is created when you're not in a rush to feed, when you're not, you know, and that's like now you can take your time and you can see where are the nutrients, where is that God essence, because really making love, that's what it is. You're creating a sanctuary for God to be expressed, for you to be able to experience God in human form through another, not because that person is God, but
Yes.
because through that person you get that experience to make love to God, to be in that space. And that's you can, you know, that I think that it's like that again, the fast food, right? It's like you can have it, you can eat it and feel for a moment that you got what you needed. But what happens an hour later, 2 hours later? You know, and in so many ways we're so uninformed of how our chemistry works as well as women. You know, we have bonding hormones. Every time that we're intimate with a man, we release these bonding hormones. So it's not just casual sex.
It's
This is
not.
actually taking a toll on us, but we're numb. We don't want to deal with that. You know, it's like I rather ignore that because I want to be equal, because I am empowered. You know, it's no, we receive, we are vessels, we're chalices, you know, and it's very different. A man can do that without the bonding hormone, you know, and again, there we're in different layers of awareness and consciousness. But what is so important is that I really do believe that women lead the standard of life. And so if we come into this empowered, true empowerment, not just that dynamic energy that stands up for itself
Yeah.
and knows its truth and you know that, but like the empowerment that comes from that, the essence that says, I surrender.
Mm.
I am empowered and I don't need to scream all the time. Yes, of
Yeah.
course, it's necessary. I don't need to, you know, claw my way through things all the time, but I have my claws. They're still here. I have my fangs, you know, I have my wildness that is here when I need it, when it needs to protect me, when it needs to protect my children, you know that, but it isn't what I lead with because that's not a natural state of being for the nourishing woman body, you know, in essence. And so yeah, you know, all this, like, it's just ways to monetize and capitalize on our addictions, on our disconnect, on our traumas. Many you know, in many ways we're reenacting traumas and
Over
we're
and over.
eroticizing trauma. And because we feel a charge, we think this must be good, this must be healing. But so many times we're re-traumatizing our bodies every time we go through the experience. But again, and so much love, I feel so much compassion for that because we're so unaware and it's a journey. I'm sure, so unaware of many things, you know,
Absolutely.
and trusting that the journey always brings to you what you are ready for. It
Mhm.
will never bring you too much. It will never bring you not enough. It's just what are you gonna be honest about with yourself?
Yeah.
What kind of honesty are you available for? So yeah,
Love
and I mean,
that.
even with the sex thing, I feel like some of us
We're gonna have
connect
to do a whole episode
and
on that.
yeah, exactly. That's a
Absolutely.
whole other thing. But that addiction is that connection, the longing for connection, and what that how that it expresses through each of us, and
Mm.
that porn, that all of that is like, that's what we're, oh, that must be it.
Yeah.
That must be, I'm unworthy as a man if my penis is in this size,
Yeah.
if I'm not this tall, if I'm not, with this
Totally.
amount of resources. And as a woman, same thing. We're both being subjected to
Yes.
these things of division, to these things of like, of chipping away and corroding at our soul essence, and we're falling for it. And
We
that's
are.
what makes me
Yes.
so upset in that way of like,
True.
just because we're falling for it.
And
We're
we're
saying like, okay, sure, give me the fast food so I can eat right now, and and then we're off to chase the next one, where it's like, no, we don't have to be in that survival space for connection.
yeah.
Actually, intimacy, that's available to us right now, but we gotta stop the bullshit.
Yeah.
We
And
gotta,
it's
we
not
gotta
just it's
do
not
that.
just available to us through our partnerships. It's you and I, our friendships. It's in our friendships. It's in our relationships to our family. It's everywhere.
It's
Everything is a
everywhere.
moment.
It's the web,
It
and
is.
that's the other thing, that on partnership we put so much pressure that one person is going to fulfill all of these things that only God can fulfill. Okay, so you're going to be my lover, my champion, my protector, like all of these things. But then when it comes to us, like, I can't be all those things for you. You need to, have that.
So
So
huge.
because we don't have that community where I can come to your house and get a sense of nourishment there, I can, come to my partner and my sense of nourishment there. It's like we have all these different needs that we are now putting on someone to
Yes.
fulfill that. And if they are not that, then they're not our soulmate or our twin flame, or
Yeah.
I don't believe in union anymore because, I feel trapped and I feel dragged down. But that's the thing, is that our healthy sense, for me anyway, and again, this is only my experience in my journey,
Yeah.
is that hunger that doesn't allow us to truly tune in to what is nourishment, true soul nourishment, and it moves us into that selfishness, individuality that is so prized and rewarded in our society. It's like independence. You should, have that. And that's part of the journey, absolutely. But that is not where I want to set up camp. That's not where I want to build a house.
No.
And that's, and certainly not what I feel is authentic for my soul, for my human.
I love that. And as you can see, everybody, me and Annabelle can go in every direction.
I know.
I love it.
Yes.
Well, it's good. I'm going to make a note for some particular other areas that you and I love to share that we can do some more. Um,
Yes.
so just want to honor your journey. Thank you for being here and sharing it with us. And I love you and I love your breasts. And I am excited to see the unraveling of the journey for you.
Thank you.
And to our audience, I'll just invite anything that you listen to today to just do an inner reflection of any coping mechanisms that are coming up, whether it's around food, whether it's around sex, whether it's, ways in which you are protecting or showing up in the world, and just really lovingly just see if there's some honesty that wants to arise, and just gently, write it down and see what, go to the altar of life and make a prayer if you're willing to, move forward and release and heal in any given way. And yeah, I'm definitely gonna use
Beautiful.
this time that we've shared together to deepen in my own nourishment, because it nourishes me. I love you. I'm so glad that we get to have these spaces where we can share on these journeys and these topics, and it all can be seen and held.
Yes, thank you. Thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much. And
Thank
also, you've been such a huge part of my journey and supporting me with our sisterhood, and and sending me healing, and holding me in that space. So thank you. I'm so grateful because, again, none of us are made by ourselves. None of us are, here alone. It's like we are we're a web, and you've been such
Right.
a beautiful lifeline for me,
Mm.
and thank you for having this conversation with me, and cheers to many more. And yes, thank you everyone who tuned in, and
Yeah.
take everything, hold it lightly, and take what nourishes you and leave the rest behind because it may nourish someone else. You know,
Exactly.
this is not a how to in a way, but
Yeah.
in a it's more an invitation for a deeper
Mhm.
conversation, so you can really drink from that deep well of nourishment that
Yes.
is yours and uniquely yours. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Ciao for now, everybody.